Matthew, Harmon.
Chris, how's it going, my friend?
I'm punch drunk, dude.
Yeah, I bet. How long have you been sitting here?
We're on 2 hours and 40 minutes.
I mean, you got Siciliano has literally nothing on you. Scott Hansen, these guys, you're locked in. Oh, look at me! I sit here. I don't go to the bathroom for this entire time. Yeah, right.
I don't need to pee yet, but if I do need to pee, I'm getting up and peeing. I'm not going to pee in a bottle. That's all I can tell you.
I just have to sit here and hold court then at that point, which is something I definitely can't do.
Right. Well, okay, so you're close by, although you're not as close as you used to be. You used to be in Culver, and you're now down the South Bay. But how are you?
Honestly, I'm beautiful. As good as anyone can be at this point. Very thankful, that I live with somebody. That definitely helps. We've got the dogs to keep us busy. Although with this new dog we just got, laziest dog on the entire planet. I mean, which I'm thankful for because she's a puppy, but wants to do nothing but sleep. And I'm like, girl, I get it. This is perfect. Just do you. And we'll just cross paths with each other. But it's all things are, as good as they can be at this point.
All right, so dog number one's a little itty-bitty dog. Is dog number two going to be a bigger dog?
She is bigger already. I mean, she's already bigger. She's probably, I would say, 25, 30 pounds, whereas Charlie, dog number one, is 13-ish pounds. So, yeah. We've got the real role reversal, too. The big kind of bigger dog, that's the girl dog that and as always, me and my big tough little 13-pound dog, we're still holding things down.
Yeah, you are. Well, I'm glad you're doing well. We had Liz on to start the show. She talked about the fact that you guys are still making podcast magic for Yahoo on Fridays.
Yes.
Can I say the most profane podcast in fantasy football right now? Can I say that? Is that probably true?
Yeah, it might be. I'm not going to completely own up to that. And I will say, I think Liz started off more profane than I was on the show. And then slowly I feel like every now and again, I'll drop something and then she kind of gives me a look wait, what are we we didn't talk. Are we dialing this back now? What are we doing here? I thought this was, I thought we were supposed to be leaning in. So, you got to build as good of a rapport as you can with somebody. But, I got to say, I don't know where, but then of course you get her on a topic that she's, dug in on. Those curse words are flying. So it works itself out.
Often on my show as well. And I have to believe because my show is a family show. I got a lot of kids in back seats listening to the show. Liz with this, but actually, I asked Liz to swear during her segment, and she did. It took some prodding. I don't think she could tell I was being serious, but actually did do it. Well, thank you for being here. You're a good man. It's a good cause. And people have heard Matt on my. I guess I don't know the podcast. Maybe the podcast audience and the YouTube audience don't overlap as much as I think. If you listen to the podcast at all, you've heard Matt on the show and you've heard me talk about what great work he does. And I am particularly indebted to the work that he does on wide receivers. He calls it reception perception, where he's breaking down, dare I say, every route. It's certainly every target. Sometimes it's hard to break down every route.
Yeah, it's every route over an 8-game sample that's kind of not so randomly selected. You want to get a good amount of big production games, low production games. Always try to mix in at least one divisional game for each player as much as that's possible. So, yeah, I mean, I think at last I looked at the end of the 2018 season's worth of charting. I had logged over 30,000 routes, something like that, over the now it's going to be 6 years that I've done this. So it's great because over that period, you start to realize what matters and what doesn't, when you can trust that this is who a guy is versus when they'll start to shift around. I think we'll talk a little bit about that specifically with some guys tonight. So that it's really fun to have logged all of this data, and I just think it's important to take observational science. So much of what you and I do, value what do guys look like, and then kind of put that into something that's quantifiable, so that I can be okay, this is exactly where this fits in terms of the rest of the NFL, or where this guy has gotten so much better over the course of his career. I think that's the fun part of it.
Right, and so in that way, you're more disciplined. I mean, you're specializing on a position, but you're also more disciplined than I am, because in the end, I'm left with only subjectivity, and
sure.
You're taking it. No one would say that your evaluation of each individual play isn't subjective, because we know it is, but you're trying to put it in a box that you can then compare those subjective observations on everybody else in an objective way, which is sort of the PFF model, the Pro Football Focus model. And we love it. And that's why it's not the be all end all, but it is a kind of science, and it's great. And reception perception, I check out every single year. Obviously, I love it. And you are in the middle of the major project of due 2019. So you've got a lot of work ahead of you, my friend. Lots and lots of work. However, we were able to come up with 5 receivers that you thought would be interesting to talk about because you have done either some or all of their film. And hopefully they're kind of just interesting launching points for conversations. So I think the first one's, is it Odell Beckham? It is Odell Beckham.
Yep.
We actually, I was on with a different podcast today. We talked a lot of Browns, and it's like hard to remember that Odell Beckham played 16 games. Like, wasn't he hurt this year? I guess he was hurt, but he played. So tell me what you observed.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It was shocking. He was actually the first player that I wanted. I was so curious to see what he looked like. So he's the first player that I went in and charted over the 2019 set of data. So because he's a guy who in reception perception up until last season, the 2018 charting, he was a guy who held the standard in terms of success rate versus man coverage. He was the best at getting open in terms of on a route by route basis. 80% success rate versus man coverage his rookie year. That was the beginning of his career, and he's consistently been at about that level or just a little bit under up until his first year in Cleveland. And it's one of those things where you watch the guy play, and even just from a subjective basis, it's like it just doesn't look the same. And whether that's the mounting injuries or the particular injury from last year, he's down at about a 68% success rate versus man coverage, which is not bad. It's not below average or anything, but it's clearly
not a tick.
It's not Beckham. Right. I think a lot of it too, just from a subjective perspective, I think the long speed was there because there were certainly times where he could, if he got a ball in the open field, he could make a long run with it or whatever. But the quick twitch ability, when you look at him on curl routes or getting off the line of scrimmage against press coverage, that quick twitch ability just clearly wasn't there to me. And, part of me always wants to think that a guy like that can get back to the level that he used to be because it's just, again, it's sustained greatness. That 2014 to 2018 run in terms of route running and reception perception, he was pretty much up there with Antonio Brown and nobody else. Yeah. But is that gone forever, or is that something that we can get back to? And I think that's one of the most crucial questions that anybody can ask and answer in fantasy football and just NFL analysis going into 2020.
Which, of course, we probably won't be able to answer until we see it. But he was a core muscle injury, so a sports hernia probably. Did he have surgery?
I think he had surgery after the season. He finally went, but it's kind of funny. And this is the thing with Beckham. I actually sat down and met him before the 2018 season and really enjoyed talking to him. I think he was a really fun guy. He was also very introspective. And I think it's not that people think he's an idiot or anything, I guess. I mean, he definitely has done some questionable things here and there, but he was a very introspective person. I thought that was a pretty interesting part of him. But, I think it's just one of those things though where controversy does always seem to follow him. There is a little bit of a common denominator theory there. And I did think that it was very well timed that the sports hernia, I've been playing through this all year, that kind of came out when the, come get me talk started coming out there too. So it's one of those things where I think it could be an excuse, but at the same time, it matches the film. And I think that is the most important thing to me.
All right, let's keep going with guys that you've looked at already. And I was, as far as I know, the biggest DK Metcalf supporter in our business all through the draft process and just couldn't believe the fall in the draft. I thought he should have been the number 2 receiver off the board last year after Hollywood Brown. Now I think maybe he should have been the number 2 receiver off the board after A.J. Brown. But then again, maybe he should have been number 1. But I'm fascinated. Obviously, all we heard was what a bad route runner DK Metcalf was. What'd you find?
Nah, man. I think people aren't watching. No, because for me, going into the draft last year, it was pretty much the same as you. Hollywood Brown was number 1. I had AJ Brown number 2, and then DK Metcalf was number 3. But watching him fall to the end of the second round, essentially, right? right about to be a third round pick. Like, it's insane after going back and, watching who he was in college, but also this past year in reception perception. It was so great to see the Seahawks just kind of use him in this one way. I mean, he lined up on one side of the field on over 60% of his snaps, which is pretty rare for an NFL player. Usually you're going to see them move around the field a lot, but yeah, he was definitely not. I think that our opinion, Chris, you and I, we were confirmed here on this one, because in reception perception, he was an 83rd percentile success rate versus man coverage, and right around the 80th percentile in terms of separating against press. And that was all people said he wasn't going to be able to do. And look, here, the reality is, they did craft a specific role for him, right? Like, you look at his routes,
That's
I think over six.
Do.
Right. About 60% of them were go routes, slant routes, and curl routes, and a few digs here and there. But it was a very limited route tree, but who cares? I think that's
giant and fast.
Right. And I still come back to, and it's fun to see this kind of confirmed through reception perception, because I said coming into last year's draft, the player that he reminded me of was Dez Bryant, who no one is going to tell you that Dez Bryant is this like crafty route runner or anything, even at his best. But in reception perception, he was always a really strong performer at getting off the line of scrimmage against press and separating versus man coverage, because he's more of a physical freak than everybody. And I think DK is the same player.
Yeah, he just won. All right, so this one's going to break your heart, I think, because it's the wrong Panthers receiver.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you have a boat with the name SS Curtis Samuel on it. Actually, you did DJ Moore. Catching passes from Kyle Allen, DJ Moore still had a pretty good year, and I think you're going to tell me it's pretty special.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing about DJ, that was surprising last year, because it's not that I thought DJ Moore was a bad player. I just thought Curtis Samuel was underrated. And, DJ is a guy who I really liked actually coming into his draft too, and I thought could eventually develop into a good route runner. But the bottom line, from his rookie season, is he was not a good route runner. And in reception perception, especially, he really struggled against press coverage, which was, I thought, foretold a role sort of like a Juju Smith-Schuster or an Adam Thielen type of player, that big slot receiver. He finished at the 8th percentile in success rate versus press coverage his rookie year. And then this past season, what I thought was more surprising is obviously he went out and had a productive season. Good fantasy, was a guy you were happy you drafted. But the more important thing was, to me, he went out and played like an X receiver role. He was used on the outside. He wasn't the Panthers are out there, rolling out Jarius Wright as their slot receiver or whatever. What is that even? Moore was the guy who lined up outside, and he finished at the 55th percentile in success rate versus press. Again, not a great number, but a huge improvement. And he's out there taking snaps as an X receiver. When you look at the amount of routes that he faced against man and press coverage, it looks like a Nuke Hopkins, an AJ Green type of receiver. And I was really personally very surprised by that. I still think he has some ways to go as a route runner, but I don't know if you may agree with this or not. I think he's probably the best receiver after the catch in the NFL right now, and also probably the best contested catch receiver in the NFL. All those little things that beyond route running, those are the things that Moore is probably elite at this point, and I think that's what makes him so great.
Yeah, so Robbie Anderson comes there, and we'll see, but it doesn't strike me that they're the same. It's Teddy Bridgewater. I think probably Teddy Bridgewater's total lack of ability to throw the ball down the field is a little overstated, but he is a conservative. He's a conservative player. I think there's going to be some deep shots to all of them, because that's what the offense probably will be. They're going to scheme guys to be wide open deep, but I think Moore has the chance to take one more step ahead, probably.
I agree, and I really like the way the receiver core sets up for all three of these guys, because after Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore, that depth chart was, like I said, hideous last year, and it's still not great. But Robbie Anderson fills that role, I think. And these guys can probably all play all three of the receiver positions. You can see Moore at X, Samuel in the slot, Robbie Anderson as the speed flanker, or Anderson as the X, Curtis Samuel as the flanker, Moore in the slot. And it's not going to be one of the best offenses in the league. It's probably not even one of the best receiver cores in the league, but I like the versatility and the way all of these skill sets complement each other. Because last year it was just, they kind of had to use Samuel as a deep threat, and they're playing with the worst deep ball quarterback in the NFL. It's just such a bad fit. I don't think Bridgewater's going to be, throwing a bunch of vertical passes like he's Jameis Winston or anything, but I do think there's a lot more available for this offense now than there probably would have been.
Agreed. Okay, let's do Courtland Sutton. Definitely a favorite of mine as I watched him over the course of the season. The production wound up being, I think surprisingly good given what the rest of the offense was like. I think it was something like 1,100 yards and I can't remember, 6 or 7 touchdowns, which of course puts him in that stat line belongs to about 50 other receivers. But it seemed to me that he was ascendant in terms of physicality, body control, and the knock on him was always, bombed his combine, not fast. Seemed to me it's what you said before. If you're physical, you can get open without run by guys.
Yeah, and I think that's like Sutton to me. I wanted to see exactly where he slotted in this year because coming out of rookie season, reception perception results were kind of a mess. But at the same time, I wanted to preach a little caution with that for 2 reasons. And I think you're kind of seeing it with both the players we just talked about. Number one, like coming out of a rookie season, it might just simply be that these guys are raw. They're not exactly who they are yet. Like I'm always with this analysis in particular, I'm always so much more encouraged by positive results than I am discouraged by negative results because
especially early on.
Guys, especially early on. Yeah. Like if it's kind of to, year 4 or 5, unless you're Devontae Parker, who I actually said like Courtland Sutton reminded me from a rookie year perspective of Devontae Parker. And I was like, man, this guy just never got better. Well, sure enough, they actually both got better last year. But yeah, Sutton was a guy who I think I was really hesitant on in fantasy last year, and I felt like by like week 4, I think we'd agree on this. Like by week 4, it's like, I was wrong on this one. That's when it's yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, so you have to realize what you have. He's probably not as fast as Devontae Parker, right? So like, he probably doesn't have that sort of. If everything goes right, he's the number 1 receiver in fantasy ability that Parker turned out to last year. I don't think that'll ever happen again for Parker, but. Parker's definitely obviously increased his value in everybody's mind, but he's a big guy who's that fast, and Sutton isn't, but does have a lot of other. All right,
I wanted to ask you though about Sutton, like just in terms of not fantasy, but like real life NFL receiver rankings. What do you think his ceiling is?
I mean, ceiling-wise, I think he could be. Give him a really good quarterback. Give him, he could be the 15th best receiver in the league.
Yeah. That's about where I see him too. Like I didn't see enough, even just in this last great second year, where I think that he could probably be, like Julio Jones level, that type of guy. Like I think I don't even think he's as good as a guy like Allen Robinson. Like I would think Robinson is like way better than Courtland Sutton, but. Because I think he's like Robinson showed star ability his rookie year as a route runner, and then obviously his second season exploded statistically with a bad quarterback. But I think like those guys have higher ceilings probably than Sutton does, but really good player.
Yeah. All right. So we're saving the best for last, and actually we gotta go quick, but I don't want to go too quick. We'll go a little over because you want to scoop some poop on Amari Cooper, and I'm here for it.
I don't want to dog the guy, but I don't think like when I think about route running, like, and people like I always say that Stephon Diggs, I think, is the best route runner in the NFL. And then I think it's like Devontae Adams, Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen. I think Keenan Allen, like those are guys. I think those are the ones. And Beckham, when he's healthy, he's that level too. But again, like after 2019, I just don't know what to say. And then, of course, obviously there was Antonio Brown, but currently not in the National Football League. So like those are the guys that have always personified the best route runners in the league to me. But Cooper's just not at their level. And I think I said to you when we were texting about this, I kind of think he's the most overrated route runner in the league. Not overrated player, but I think he's most overrated in terms of like route running and separation. He's gotten actually consistently worse in reception perception at beating man and press coverage every year since his rookie season. And he's never really even at his best, he was like a 69th percentile player against press and man coverage. Like, and ever since, I mean, even like last year in Dallas, obviously he had a good season, but in terms of beating press, probably one of his worst seasons ever. And I don't think it's bad for his production because the Cowboys actually, to their credit, use him pretty well. Like they move him around the field, they get him in motion a lot, and then they have an actual strong X receiver in Michael Gallup, who is a player I'm like still really building excitement for. So That's my spicy take on Amari Cooper. I hope nobody signs off and doesn't donate because of that.
I'll say this. I think he's gotten worse. I mean, in this year, he had the injury and he gutted it out. He played all 16 too. It doesn't seem like he did. There was that Patriot game where he played one snap and didn't seem to want the ball. But I feel like he's changed as a player, and maybe that's being just too much a slave to 2019. But I feel like those first couple of years in Oakland, he was someone I would do. I didn't have a YouTube channel at the time, but I would have done clips of and said, look at him set up a route. Look at him get separation at the top of his route in a way that the defensive back is just helpless. And I just flat out didn't see it last year.
Yeah. I think he's gotten better at being comfortable in tight spaces, because that was the thing that he really struggled at, both as a college player and then also his early years in Oakland. I mean, he has some of the worst contested catch data from his reception perception profiles in his early career. He's gotten better at that. I think we actually noted that on your podcast during the season. But yeah, in terms of as a route runner, I think he's getting worse. And what I always tell people, because they'll inevitably hit me, with the clips, the gifs of look at this great route. It's I get it. Yeah, he flashes elite route running, but he is nowhere close to the consistency on route by route basis of guys like Adam, Diggs, Thomas, even a guy like an Allen Robinson or a Chris Godwin. I think those guys are better route runners than Cooper.
Well, it's probably not going to prevent him from being a wide receiver one. I think he probably will be.
Agree.
And, maybe even should be, but I'm not sure I'll own tons of shares. He's a mercurial player, not a mercurial friend. Matt Harmon, always there when I need him. Thank you for doing this. I hope that folks will keep listening to the Yahoo podcast with Matt and Liz. And when Reception Perception when is it ready? When is it done usually?
June 1st, it'll come out in the Fantasy Footballers Ultimate Draft Kit. If you just go to receptionperception.com, there's a link to purchase it there, and you can pre-order it, get it at that discount,
Oh, we need that discount. Well, thank you for doing this, my friend. Stay safe, okay?
My pleasure. You do the same, Chris. Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, bye, Matt. Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching. Please, please, please smash that like button, write a comment, tell us who else you'd like to see us review film on, and of course, best of all, please subscribe to our channel and then click that little bell above the subscribe button and you'll be notified whenever we post a new video.